Hello there. Hi everyone, and welcome to another Novation live stream. Thanks thanks very much for joining us. Wherever you are in the world, if you're over in the UK or in Europe, good evening. If you're over in the US, I guess good morning, and in Asia, good night. But yeah, welcome, and welcome to a very special live stream tonight. We're going to take a good look at the Summit V version 2.0, the new firmware that we have now added to the Summit and also to the Peak as well. I should give a special shout out to my good friend and colleague Enrique Martinez for stepping in a couple of weeks ago to do the live stream in which he covered pretty much the Peak and all the lovely firmware stuff that has been added to the Peak, and it's great to see Enrique step in on one of the live streams. It's my turn tonight, and this time we're going to take a look a little bit more focused on the Peak synthesizer, of course, which also benefited from the fantastic updates. And yeah, we're going to take a good look at some of the features that have been added. Now, of course, with Enrique's live stream a couple of weeks ago, he went through quite a lot of the features. A lot of the features we'll actually cover again this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, wherever you are. But we're going to take a look at it in context to the Summit, and I think that actually makes a bit of a difference to some of the features that have been added. Primarily, I would suggest the stereo stuff that has gone in. We're going to take a good look at kind of how you can use stereo within Summit to get some absolutely incredible results. It can really make quite a big difference, actually, just by having a bit more sort of stereo control over everything. So so we're going to let's start off, and yeah, why not? We'll just, I guess, delve right in. I was just playing along to a little track that I had up just running before, and I was just playing on this little this patch that I made, and this is using some of the new features that you'll find in the Summit. It's got a really kind of lovely old school, old lo-fi, old school vibe to it. It's just got a really nice taste to it. I mean, I can break this patch down in a little bit, actually, because I think it's I mean, this is one of the patches that I first explored when I started to get to grips with some of the stereo stuff. So why don't we just jump straight in? Why not? So I'm just going to initialize the patch, and let's just go over to this this shot here. So if I kind of press a couple of buttons, there we go. You can hopefully see everything. And just back to an initialized patch. You can see here on the screen, by probably my favorite button on the whole thing, actually, is the initialize button here. It just takes everything back to a starting point, which of course is a raw sawtooth waveform. Where else would you want to start from? Now, in terms of the features that have been added, really, I think, yeah, we will start off with the stereo stuff. And, yeah, I mean, if we go into the voice menu here, and on page 2 here, you can just use the page buttons at the bottom here to scroll around, if you're not familiar with the workflow. And on page 2 of the voice page, or a voice menu, we have a thing called spread. Now, I think this was called Unispread originally, if I remember correctly, and this was really just a way to kind of add a little bit of stereo-ness to your sounds. So, here we've got spread set to 0. We're set to spread mode diverge. We'll go through the different modes in a moment, but spread mode diverge is basically set to 0, we're getting no stereo kind of whatsoever. By the way, if you are able to, I'd probably recommend this section, at least of the live stream, for you to use headphones or have a decent set of speakers so you can hopefully hear the stereo stuff that's going on. So let's at the minute, no spread, just everything's down the center. But if we start to turn the spread up, and you can hear now that the sounds are starting to bounce around left and right. If my mixer behaves itself, I think I've got a dodgy channel on the mixer, which I've just discovered about 5 minutes before we started, but there we go. Now, if I just play the notes individually, everything's coming down the center. If I start to hold on to the notes and, you know, keep them sustained, you hear this start to fan out from the center into a stereo spread. And that's the diverge. That's kind of the usual way, or the previous way that we had a little bit of stereo control over the sound. Now, if we then change the spread mode to, which one is the next one? Let's see. I'll just go here, diverge 2. Well, basically, yeah. Oh, hang on. No, I've missed one. Alternate. There we go. And now we're just going to get... add some spread. Now hopefully you can hear that that's just going hard panning left and right on alternate notes. And again, we can bring the spread in a bit and just bring them both in towards the center a little bit. That's great. Now let's move to the diverge 2, and this is now what we call a round robin. So basically it's going to... hopefully you can hear now it's starting to bounce around again. But what's actually happening here is that... oh, I keep turning the wrong knob. If we go back to diverge 2, what's happening here is... basically it's using like a round robin. So each time a note is played, it's going to move it to within the stereo field, again from the center. Just filter that down a bit, get it a little bit less harsh. Bring in that second oscillator and detune it. There we go. Okay, so we're now using a round robin. Now this is quite interesting when you get an arpeggiator on. So let's just go for play mode key latch, and let's just play a little thing in. Now, hopefully you can hear, each time the note is sounding, it's actually in a different kind of position. So it's kind of round robin. It's just saying, okay, next note we'll put in a different position, next note we'll put in a different position, and so on and so forth. And again, we can use the spread control to bring them all a little bit more central. So we can get quite subtle with it. Or you can kind of use the new pan position controller here to offset it. So let's say I've got a spread to about 37. That's quite kind of central. But let's go to pan position and just shift that all the way over to the right hand side. So now we've got a much heavier emphasis on the right hand side. And once again, if we go over to the left, we've got a much heavier emphasis on the left. So we have got a pan position, but really this is just an offset. And here it's all over, all the way to the right now, and then if we move all the way over to the left, oh, let's get the spread. Oh, hang on, of course, I'm on diverge 2. Let's go back and take spread off. We don't want spread on if we just want to listen to the pan position. There we go, of course. That's all the way over to the left. And let's move all the way over to the right. So you can use the pan position here to, you know, kind of basically position the sound where you want it, either left or right. But if you want to get a bit of interaction on a single patch, this is not within the multi-mode. This is where we'll get to some exciting stuff as we get into the multi-mode. But if I just then, so if I use the different diverge modes and the pan position, we're just going to offset them in the spectrum, in the stereo field, wherever we want them to be. Now, I'm going to move over to this last one, note val. And with this one, when we turn spread on, basically each of the notes on the keyboard, there's been a clever little bit of algorithmic stuff in the background that has basically just given each of the notes its own individual and unique position in the stereo field. So let's see, if I press the note C, it's just there. If I press this note, it's over in the right side. There we go, that note's in the left side. Now if we do the same thing with the round robin, you can hear now, on diverge 2, it's bouncing around, it's moving around. But if we go to the note val, that particular note is going to hold in that stereo position. Now, why would we do that? So, once again, this is really very useful when we start to think about, yeah, about the arpeggiator. So this is the diverge again. And you can see now the notes are kind of bouncing around. And in the arpeggiator, it's never kind of the same position for that. We've got stereo stuff going on, but it's not, you know, each of the notes is not in the same place each time. But if we go to note val, now the notes are held in their position in the stereo field. So it just allows you a bit of choice there in terms of how you want the stereo stuff to basically work for you in the spreads. Now let's take the spread off and let's move to a multi-patch. Okay, there we go. So I've got here just again an initialized patch, this time in a multi. Now, if you're not familiar with Summit, Summit has kind of two ways of approaching sound design. You can have a single patch, which will give you 16 voices of a polysynth. That's a lot of voices, a lot of stuff to play with there, and a set of common controls for all of those things. If I go to a multi now, I can turn Summit into bitimbral. That means I can play two separate sounds out of essentially two different synthesizers at the same time. And again, we can manage these by using these buttons here, the multi-mode buttons. We've got layer, split, so we can split the keyboard into two sections and play them differently. We can even go to dual as well, which treats them as two totally independent sets of voices. So I can have one sound on part A, a totally different sound on part B, and just address them differently. That's really useful if you're sequencing, and basically you want two polysynths. You can split it into two separate polysynths. But if we go to the layer section here, by the way, you can see now on the active voice LEDs here, if I go to dual mode and I play some notes, I get a nice blue LED on that top layer. If I press B, go to part B, I now get orange LEDs in there on the bottom layer here. So I've got 8 voices per each side. When I go to layer, I get both parts, part A and part B, playing at the same time. Now, obviously, with a layer, that means we can actually start to stack different sounds on top of each other, and and actually get some really quite interesting results. So, how can we use maybe panning or stereo stuff to do that? Well, let's see. If I mean, we're just in a layer here, and if I just play a chord, everything's coming straight down the center there. That's fine. That sounds nice. Okay, no worries. If I go to my voice page, page 2, I've got pan position. So if I go to part A and send the pan all the way down to the left-hand side, and now, so now I've got part B in the center, part A all the way to the left. Now, if I go to part B and then split that all the way to the right, now what we've got, now this is really subtle at this point. Oh, hang on, let's do that. There we go. So what we've got now are two separate, essentially, synthesizer voice cards, or boards, or whatever you want to call them, the actual PCB, the workings of the synth. We've actually got two separate synthesizers joining together, playing the same stuff, playing the same notes, but they're actually, what we've got here, we've got oscillators that are not perfectly bang on in sync. And this, with one on the left side, one on the right hand side, this is giving us a really interesting stereo interaction. Now, what does that mean? So let's now let's just get the pan position back to the center. Now this is just exactly the same sound, but this time we've not got any panning on it. Sounds good. Okay, but now let's just bring voice A, part A to the left, part B to the right, and now. And immediately we've got a lot more presence. There's a lot more kind of, well, basically audible movement in there. And that becomes a really important part of that stereo feel. And it really opens things up nicely. Let's just get a bit more going on with the sound. Bring the VCA down a touch. Manage your gain stages with this thing, because there's lots of them. So this is really nice. So basically we've kind of got this much bigger, much broader stereo kind of field to work in. And of course we can start to do some really interesting things. So let's just put a bit of LFO onto the filter. Let's just slow that down a bit. Bit of resonance, why not? Bit of overdrive there. Key tracking down a touch. Okay, that's great. So if I now go to the to the left part B, and what I'll do is I'll just actually invert the LFO here. Now you should start to hear we're getting a really nice kind of movement. It's not a dance, honestly. I'm just yeah, you can start to get that sense of movement in the sound now, and this really opens things up a lot. Okay, let's just get that key latched on for all of them. Yeah. By the way, you'll see I'm pressing these buttons together here and they go white. I can go to part A and individually tweak the parameters for part A. I can go to part B and individually tweak the parameters for part B, or I can press these two things together, and now these controls are actually for both parts at exactly the same time. Bring a bit of FM into that as well. And hopefully you can hear, you know, we're starting to get some really interesting stuff happening. Let's just deepen the LFO on part A, and the same on part B. So this is really where things get really quite interesting. So let's just take that LFO back a bit, which is nice. Now, of course, we've got all these controls up on the top panel here, like LFO directly connected to the filter. But of course, we've now got pan position, so we can, you know, move things around. But in our mod matrix, the pan position now exists as well. So if I just scroll all the way to the end and then back a few, I find that the easiest thing to do here. Basically, all the additional new modulation possibilities are actually stuck at the end of the list. So if you want to get to the new stuff, just scroll to the end and then you can work your way back. Now here we've got to pan position. So once again, I'm going to go to part A. Actually, let's just do this for both of them. So I'm going to get an LFO. Let's go for LFO 2. And now part A, I'm going to go for a negative amount of LFO 2. And then on part B, I'm going to go for a positive amount of LFO 2. So we've now got the LFO connected to the filter moving around. But actually, if we just go for a little bit more, I think. Yeah, about 50. Yeah, there we go. Now you can start, hopefully, to hear that start to move around. Let's just move LFO 2 to a bit of a faster. And again now, if I just, let's just do that for both of them. If I just bring the LFO down again now. Now that's really subtle now. But basically the two synth parts are just kind of moving around there. And just give me some nice sort of stereo stuff. So there we go. So I mean that's a really big thing about about the stereo side of things. I think this really does definitely open a lot of stuff up. So that's the first thing really to talk about. It's the fact that now we've got a lot of stereo capabilities. Now that was a super basic patch there. I got a multi got earlier, and it was actually based around that sound that I was using right at the beginning. This one here, and I just think this is such a nice. It's a really lovely kind of sound. Now there's another thing going on in here. I think a lot of people are already aware of this next thing that I'll show that I think is brilliant. I know Enrique was really taken with this when he did the stream last week. and that's actually using the noise oscillator as a modulation control. So let's think about what that actually means. So let's go back to a single patch here. We'll just initialize it. So back to the old faithful. There we go. Now, in the modulation matrix, this is basically where you can take a control and then patch that into a destination. So we've got the usual suspects in here. You know, we've got mod wheel here, aftertouch for the keyboard, or if you've got a poly aftertouch device as well, you can, you know, Summit and Peak are both poly aftertouch instruments. LFOs, LFO 1, 2, envelopes as well. Animate switches, we'll look at those shortly as well. But if we, again, keep scrolling towards the end, in fact, at the very end here, we've got noise. And noise is basically this oscillator here. And instead of its, well, I mean, if I just bring the noise up, this is the noise. White noise, which you can nicely filter, of course, using the filter here, which is great. And that's a sound source. We're listening to that, obviously, as a sound. Now, if I take that down, bring the first oscillator up, the noise itself can be sent to control places. So, you know, I could send it to, for example, the filter frequency here. And again, I'll just add some depth to it so we get a bit of an effect. And we can dial in how much of that we want as well. Get quite extreme with it. Again, you could go minus or positive, negative or positive, or we could just center in the center here. Okay, now noise into filter is lovely, but to be honest with you, that has been there for a little while, I think. If let's see, where is it? I think it might have even been just a destination already. Let's see, noise into filter. Where are you? You are in here, I'm sure you are. Yeah, past the, there it is, noise into filter. So that had actually been there already. That's what we call kind of a normal connection. That's already made. That noise going into the filter is already there. But what we didn't have was noise to be able to control various other places. And one thing that I think is really, really tasty, and this was my colleague Dan pointed this one out. I think this is lovely. The VCA level here. So basically, the overall, how much the amplifier is going to be opened by when you send an amp envelope to it and all that sort of stuff. But you can also send noise to it. So that is always going to kind of keep that interesting random kind of white noise control over the VCA. So let's just increase that up. And you can hear all of the notes, all of the oscillators in the background of the keyboard are actually passing through the VCA. So we can hear every single note that's kind of been played, and all of the 16 voices that we've played in the past however long. But what we're doing now is we're using the noise, that noise control there, to actually open up the VCA. And this is just giving this really wonderful kind of like old school tape kind of vibe. Just bring that up a bit. Now I'm not playing any notes here at all. I've just got everything running. Let's just bring the filter down a touch. It just gives this lovely, lovely crunchy kind of feel. So let's just, yeah, get a bit of resonance on that as well. Again, I'm going to bring in a second oscillator. Just detune it a little bit. And go to my oscillator page and just use the diverge control. This is just really going to bring in a bit of a really lovely sort of analogy flavour. Maybe just tune that a little bit more. Oscillator 3 all the way down. So we've just got this, I mean, you know, it's a really crunchy, very, very lo-fi kind of sound, but just got a lovely kind of feel to it, I think. Maybe I've got a bit too much on that VCA stuff, so I'll just bring it back a touch. It's really subtle. Now, of course, reach for this pot here, the reverb. And the reverb is a really wonderful, wonderful reverb on the instrument. So, yeah, I mean... So, noise into the VCA. I think that's a really lovely thing to do. So that's definitely something to explore and play with. But of course, we can send noise to wherever we want. I mean, you know, I've tried this before. Your live stream is perhaps not the best place to try. God knows what's going to happen. But I'm going to put LFO1 rate. We have noise modulating LFO1 rate. So let's just initialize again, and we'll do that again. So noise, LFO1 rate. So this is without any LFO. Let's put some LFO on the filter just because it's there and it's dead easy to do. Right. Now let's see what happens. And I've never done this before, so as I say, this could be a big mistake, but let's find out. I'm going to add some noise into the LFO1 rate. Well, that sounds like it's speeding it up, but if you see my... If we slow it down, actually, yeah. You can hear basically how the LFO, which is set to a triangle wave shape here, has basically kind of gone a bit broken, but in a good way. We're actually adding noise to change the speed of it. So basically we're waggling this pot internally, not mechanically, but kind of virtually waggling this pot in a really random and fast way. It's kind of like halfway between sample and hold and not. Anyway, there we go. There we go. Anyway, so again, nice little bit of something to play with. The noise, I think, is the latest source. Actually, no, we have now got, I think, bend wheel plus and minus. I can't remember if that was in previously or not. But yeah, noise there as a modulation source is some really, really nice stuff, I think. So yeah, so that's a couple of things. Now, while we're into the mod matrix, we can have a quick look at some of the other destinations that are in there. And again, these are some things that really have been kind of, well, I think asked for quite a bit. And they're really quite interesting. We'll go back to an initialized patch again. Okay, let's just check out the stream is still there. Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, cool. We're still there. Now, what were we going to do? Yeah, so we're going to look at some of the new destinations in here. So let's take a look. Firstly, you know, we've got the pan position. We've explored that already. We've used pan position in here. But if we get to the shape here, so oscillator shape 1, 2, and 3. Now, this is actually an interesting one because this could technically have been done previously. Basically, we've now got all 3 of the shape controls, these controls here, available to modulate simultaneously. Now, we could do that previously because if we go to the destinations, you'll see here I have oscillator 1 shape. Then I could go to mod slot 2 and dial in oscillator 2 shape. There you go. And mod slot 3 and dial in oscillator 3 shape. And then start to, you know, send modulation to those on 3 separate mod slots. But of course, that's taking up 3 different mod slots, and we don't really need to do that if we have oscillator 1, 2, 3 shape. So where are we going again? There it is, oscillator 3 shape. Now, the shape control here, obviously we've got our wavetables, and the shape control lets you scan through the wavetables. You know, we've got a whole load of wavetables on Summit and the ability to put our own wavetables in as well. And we can use those to scan through them, but also the kind of the more traditional wave shapes, the sine, triangle, square, and sawtooth also have wave shape as well. So let's just try it with a triangle, which gives us a nice kind of wave folding sort of thing. And I'm just bringing them into different positions already. So this is it raw. And now let's take some modulation. So I'm going to get the mod wheel. Where are you, mod wheel? I think you're at the beginning, aren't you? Yep, there you go. And we'll add some depth to that. And now I'm now able to move all 3 of these pots at the same time. Now maybe we can change the shape. We'll go to a sol there. And again, you can adjust these manually to find the right starting point. It's quite a harsh one there. And again, if I wanted to, I'd go to my Wavetables here and then just quickly choose random Wavetables. I don't... Ooh, there we go. And do this one here. And now... And all we're doing is listening just to the waves here. And a bit of overdrive to beef it up. So having that control, that common control over the three of them is really quite nice to have, and just opens up a bit more possibilities for your kind of waveform shaping controls. Now, another one that we've got as well, we've added a load of destinations for the envelopes that we didn't have in here before. One of the big questions that we got asked was can we have sustain? Can we have modulation of the sustain part of the envelopes? And that's made it in there now. I think a good way to demonstrate this is to turn on the looping envelope. So I've just turned on the looping envelope for the amplifier. Now it's just a single note, and the looping envelope here is letting me basically act like an LFO, really, a shapeable LFO. So we've got an attack and a decay there. Now if I bring up the sustain, that's having an effect on basically how the loop is interacting. So if I got some sort of modulation to start to move this around for me, we can get some quite interesting things happening with that. So let's go to the mod matrix. Let's go and choose LFO1. Do we want? Yeah, no, let's go for plus, I think. And then we'll bring that into amp envelope sustain. There we go. And add a bit of depth. Actually, we take a bit out, I think. Now you can hear we've kind of built a rhythm using the LFO moving this around for us. So if I change the rate of the LFO, let's just go. Now if I go to a sample and hold LFO, so basically a random LFO, that's basically just moving around randomly. And again, we've got this quite interesting kind of interaction now. It's just nothing, an untreated sawtooth here, apart from the envelope. So, you know, that's a lovely thing. Now, the other things that we've got the hold point. Now, the hold point is the state between the attack and the decay. So again, I can modulate how long it's held between where the sound reaches the attack pinnacle, and then it starts at the decay and then it's going to come down. So we can actually increase that. It's a little bit like sustain, but between the attack and the decay. Now, I think this should do it. Let's go to plus. And once again, we've got a similar thing as when we start to modulate the sustain here as well. So, yeah, so you can kind of use this to do some interesting stuff as well. And these are new modulation destinations that made it in. So we've basically got hold, sustain, and also delay as well. Yeah, just a moment on delay as well, I think. The delay is an interesting one as well, because delay is basically how long it takes before the envelope is triggered. Now, how will I do this? I tell you what, I'm going to put this onto the mod envelope delay. Mod envelope 1. Mod envelope 1 is directly connected to the filter here. Of course, I can set it wherever I like in the mod matrix, but it's normal. I have already got two connections here. So let's just put the decay on. And I think if I loop this as well, actually, no, let's not loop it. Let's just put the decay on. Let's put an arpeggiator on. So let's take loop off. And this is quite a funny one, because if I just lock this in, latch it on. Now let's increase the delay. Can you help? I don't know if you can hear this. Hopefully you can. Let's turn it up a bit. Again, it sounds a little broken here, but that's basically because we're introducing a random amount of a delay before the attack phase of this envelope. So we're just kind of getting this interesting little weird little interaction here with the envelopes, which is quite fun. Get kind of wonky stuff with that. So yeah, so there we go. So we've got some nice modulation destinations already in there. Right, so let's see what else do we have. Yeah, we've been through the pan position, which we've looked at already. We've got the shape control as well, amp and mod delay. And yeah, okay. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Again, this was kind of, again, Enrique kind of went through this last week. We're back onto that nice patch that I had before. Let's just take that down a touch. Now, if I go to my settings, we've got a setting in here called, where is it? It's in here somewhere. Yep, tuning, not tuning mode, patch queue. Now, patch queue, if I turn that on, and let's just take the settings menu off. Now, if I change to a different patch, let's go to this one, I'm still playing the original patch. That's just running nicely. This patch is now queued up. Brazil's here, so that's only going to load now when I press multi again. Now, this is great from a live performance point of view because I can queue up that patch, get it ready to play, and then when I'm ready, I can bring that in and play the right notes, of course. Once again, I can then say, okay, I want to go back to that grainy patch again, grainy mult, there it is. And then when I'm happy, I can then just so the patch queue there just allows you to queue up the next patch and work with it. Now, another really good thing about the patch queue is, let's go back to that Brazil's patch, this one. Let's go. So this patch can just run out, it's key latched, so I can do all sorts of things to it. I can start to play around with the FM. Get really messed up. Bit of distortion there. And then if I press the multi button again, oh actually, no, if I just go back to Brazil's, that starts to flash, and when I'm ready, I can then just bring it back in when I want it to be. And that's again, you know, a really kind of nice thing. So I can kind of really start to play around, mess around with the sound, start to build it up quite a bit, just get really into kind of messing it up, go on a bit of a journey with it. And again, if I'm kind of in a sort of a live situation, sort of start to wig out and enjoy it. And then when I'm happy, I can just go back to that same patch and then just load it back in. So a nice little performance tip really, I guess, there. The new patch queue, which is in the settings menu, patch queue there. Yeah, it's really useful to have. I think another reason for the patch queue setting is on the peak. Sometimes, because of the layout of the buttons around the screen, you can sometimes hit the patch button by accident instead of saving. So if you hit the patch button, it'll reload the patch and you've lost your stuff there. So if you've got patch queue, it just gives you another kind of buffer there to stop you from basically from doing that. So it's pretty nice stuff to have. Now let's move to the LFO stuff as well. So, you know, we've got on Summit, we've got 4 LFOs. We have on Peak as well. The LFOs 3 and 4 arrived on Peak a little bit later. They came in a firmware update, and they were added basically to give us some form of LFO controls for the FX modulation, because we can actually really modulate the effects that we've got in here. And yeah, so that's the reason why they were added. But they were pretty basic LFOs. They just gave you a standard kind of, you know, your 4 shapes. I think there was sync available on there, so you could sync them in time to your incoming clock and that sort of stuff. But there wasn't too much scope for controlling them. But now on the LFO menu, we have got our LFO main controls here, but we've got a new page with our phase control, slew, and a fade time. So these are 3 new things that have been added into the LFO. They're pretty basic things, you know. They're features that were already existing on the LFO 1 and 2, but weren't there for LFO 3. So adding these in just gives it a little bit more, again, you know, a little bit more power and control. Just a little point on the phase thing. This also gives us a key sync as well, which is pretty neat to have. Let's just init the patch. That old chestnut. Back to that one. Now, if I go to the mod matrix and say, you know, instead of using LFO1 for the filter, let's go to LFO3, and let's just put that onto the filter cutoff once again. Pretty basic stuff, but it doesn't really matter. It's just for demonstration purposes. So now we have LFO3 over here, basically controlling the filter. And this is a global LFO. You can hear it's global because if we do the same thing with the voice layered LFOs, let's go to the right here and put it onto the filter. You can hear how basically they're all kind of firing off at basically at a different time, and we can use the phase control to kind of get them even more sort of broken apart. But if I go back to using LFO3, they're going to be common. But one thing that's quite interesting with the LFOs here is now that if we've got a phase control, at the minute it's a free running LFO. So if I just kind of play a chord arpeggio, hang on, let's go to chord. You can hear the LFO is just working regardless of where the notes are. Just take it off a bit so you can hear it a little. Now if we go to phase and we just stick that to 0 phase, they're basically just triggering with each note. I guess perhaps this might be a bit easier to hear with a sawtooth on. Let's just change the... Now, if we turn the phase on, you'll see now the LFO is being triggered with each note that's being triggered as well. And that's actually really useful. I mean, you can then use, you know, these LFOs almost as kind of handy extra envelopes. So yeah, so the global LFO controls are there as well. Now let's go into the effects, because I think this is probably, is it my favorite? I think it possibly is my favorite, this one. Now I know Enrique spoke a lot about the flanger and the flanger. Yeah, I don't know if we know exactly how to say it, but basically the 2 different types of flangers that have been added into the chorus. He also spoke about the new delays as well. If you want to learn about the chorus stuff, you know, Enrique's video on Peak is really, yeah, he goes through that really well. He also does on the delay too. But this is probably my favourite thing, and I think this is something I'd really like to explore. Now, on the effects section here, basically, if I go to this page here, we've got this new page, and we've got time mode in there, and time mode is basically, this came about essentially because at Novation we were talking about how we really wanted to get kind of longer delay times than you could already get on Peak and on Summit. We wanted to extend kind of how long the delay could be. Now, the way that it was originally programmed meant that we couldn't just throw extra time in there. There was no real way of being able to just add extra time into that. So sat down and thought long and hard about how to do it. And Danny and Chris Huggett, now I'm going to talk about Chris in a little bit actually, but yeah, Danny, Chris Huggett kind of came up with this really great idea of, well, if we drop the sample rate of the delay, we can get more time out of it. If we half the sample rate, we can get double the amount of time out of it. And so that was what was decided. So if I just bring in the delay here, and let's see, do I want sync? No, I'm not. I'm just going to put, yeah, this is going to be really, again, shocking demo, but so there we've got the delay. pretty straightforward. Now if I go to double, you can instantly hear it's twice as long. It's pretty straightforward. If we go to treble, you can hear now we've got 3 times the length. And if we go to quad, lo-fi, we've now got 4 times the length. There it is. So we've, obviously by doing this, we increase the time. Now if I stick that right the way up, there it is. So it's quite a nice long delay, that. And if we go to the other side here, we've got hex, as in 6, very lo-fi. And this is what, well, basically we asked Chris to sort of double the delay time, and he went away and then came back and said, well, I've added a few more modes in there, which might be useful as well, including this hex v lo-fi. And what this basically does is it gives us 6 times more delay. Now, yeah, a quick point about my old chum Chris Huggett. Now, Chris was essentially the engineer who built the Peak and built the Summit, alongside many other really wonderful instruments and synths out there. The bass station, the original bass station, the bass station 2, of course, Mini Nova, Ultra Nova. Little known fact as well, the engine in the Novation circuit is a Chris Huggett synth 2. And also previous to that, some incredible work with his own company, the Oxford Synthesizer Company, with the Oscar back in, I think, 1985, and then the Wasp as well. You know, Chris is really pretty much one of those legendary synthesizer engineers that we've managed to produce in the UK. Sadly, he passed away it was late 2020. He'd been ill for a little while, but we obviously were in discussion about kind of getting some firmware stuff done, and Chris, before he passed away, he managed to get this firmware with all these fantastic features too. So it was really quite a special feat, especially where he was at that time, to be able to do that and to bring all these wonderful new features in. And there's not really a day goes by where I don't miss the guy. He was a good friend and an absolute genius, a total legend, and a real pleasure to work with as well. So I think this is just this was already an amazing instrument, but for Chris to be able to do what he did, and certainly in the position he was in at that time, to be able to get this out, I think is just incredible. Now, of course, that was some time ago, and we had these features in there into the firmware some time ago, but obviously, with Chris's passing, we had quite a complex kind of a complex sort of side to getting everything together and getting it into Peak and Summit. So it did take a little while to be able to get that out there. We were always working on it and working really hard on it, and I think a special mention should go to Mr. Nick Bookman, another friend of Chris and mine's as well, who really kind of sort of grasped the challenge of really kind of taking what Chris did and really working hard on it, and obviously getting rid of quite a lot of sort of things that were, I suppose you would class them as bugs, basically, in the instruments as well. So it did take a long time, but I think it's worth the wait, and I think it's also testimony really to essentially the genius of Chris Huggett as well. So yeah, sorry to kind of take things off track a little bit there, but I just wanted to get that out, because it's I think it's what Chris was able to do at that time is pretty special. Anyway, he did come back, as I say. We'd asked for double the delay rate, and he came back with another 4 different versions, including 6 times the delay rate. And what that means is that essentially we've got something here that we could basically treat as a looper, which I think is really, really impressive. So I've got it onto sync here, and the delay here is just, if we take the feedback off all the way down, and now I've got a beat running. Let me just see, am I clocked? No, I'm not clocked. Let me just go to external auto. Yeah, okay. And now I'm clocking here from a circuit rhythm, which you can't really see. It's off camera. Now if I hit play on that, yeah, I've got a beat running there. That's great. Now I've got my sync turned on here, volume up, and I'm just going to hit a note. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4. There it is. So we've got that in sync. Now I'm going to go to actually to 8 beats, which will give me 2 bars. So let's just clear that out by just getting rid of the feedback. That's just going to let everything pass for one time, remove it out of the delay line, get it all the way back up, and let's just try that again now. So now we've got this just running in the background. So I can then start to bring in some other bits. So let's just bring the filter down, a bit of distortion up. And you can just really, I don't know, you can start to mess around with this quite a lot. And you can hear now that's just kind of running around. Now if I just, I'll stop the circuit rhythm playing that beat. And it's just going to loop and loop and loop, but because we're on this lo-fi delay, 6 times lo-fi, 6 times the lower sample rate, it's just going to break up in the most wonderful way. Now again, if I go back to my first page on the effects page, we're routing in parallel, so the delay, the reverb and the chorus are all getting hit by the notes at the same time, but you can change the order of them. So let's put the delay just before the reverb, and just bring that up. Once again, I'll just take the rhythm out of there, and we've just got this delay now that's just running around in the background. And of course, in here we've got some other controls as well. Yes, this was definitely something I wanted to talk about. The first thing, if I change the time mode, so if I just move this back to what would it be? To quad. Okay, this is going to be how can I put this? It's going to be 1.5 times faster. So if I play around with these different time modes, now this is where it gets really nice. You can really start to mess around with the way that the delay is working. Back to where it was. But the thing is, in this mode, all the relationships of the different time modes are totally sort of perfect. You know, it's either twice as fast or 1.5 times as fast. So they're harmonically really well related. And that's a really lovely thing. And again, we can do this from this side here. So this is just the normal mode. And then go slow. So that's twice as long. That's going to put it down a fifth. Treble, 3 times. Quad, so this is now down 2 octaves. And then down 2 octaves and a bit. So, yeah, so that's quite a lot of fun. Now, there's another thing that we can do with this as well. And this is one of the really great, again, new destinations that's made it into the effects modulation matrix. So let's just get a nice loop thing going again. I'll just, I tell you what, no, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to come back to that. Because there's something else that I do want to just explore a little bit. Now, check this out. I'm going to move to Ableton. What? Let's go over to this screen here, and hopefully you can see everything still. Now, why have I gone to Ableton? Well, another mode that has gone into the Summit is in the settings page, and this is to do with local control. Now, I'm just going to explain a little bit about local control, hopefully kind of maybe demystify it. I'm not too sure. Let's back to our old sawtooth again. Let's just bring that down. Sorry about it. I mean, it's not much of a sound designy sort of session today, but it's just going through these new features. Hopefully that's all right. Just got a bit. Great. Okay, so the settings. Okay, local is on. What does that mean? So basically, when I hit a key now, I am locally playing that key and the sound is coming out. I'm locally controlling the synthesizer. If I take local off, now I have no local control over the synthesizer, including the pots on the top here. If I waggle the filter, it's not going to affect the sound. There is no local control. And this is really useful if you're working in kind of a sequencer-based environment or a DAW-based environment. If you look in Ableton here, let's see, can you see my record enable button? Just about. Yeah, it's not all covered. But if I click on this track here, this is a MIDI track, and I've got MIDI coming from channel 15, MIDI channel 15, and it's going out to a MIDI interface, which is actually connected directly to the USB on here on channel 15. Now, if I go to my settings page here and have a look at my settings here, the global channel is set to 15. So if I record enable this track, that's pretty neat. Now, if I just play a little beat and then just record something in here. Okay, that'll do. So let's just stop that. Let's make it a bar. Okay. And should I quantize it? Yeah, I probably should. Okay. Now I can stop that now. That was just my metronome. Great. Okay. Now, in local off, what's going on here is I'm sending MIDI out to the computer. The computer's processing that and then sending that MIDI back in. Now if I start to use the pots, add some effects again. There we go. So I can now use these controls because we've got a MIDI loop. These controls are sending out to the computer and coming back in. If I move to a different track now, so let's go to this track here and I'll record enable this. Now, if I move any of these pots, once again, because we're on set to local, I'm not actually controlling anything here. However, my keyboard is now set to this first track and this is set to piano sound. But I have no control over the synthesizer. So in the local settings here, we've got off, which means the local control is off, and I can use this as a controller keyboard. I got to local on, and now when I play, you'll hear I get the piano and the synthesizer because I have local control and also signal coming back from the computer. And now we have this new mode, sec sequencer. What this means is that the keyboard is now totally disconnected from controlling the synthesizer, so I can play the piano on its own. But I now have, because we're set to sec, I still have control over the synth part. So I've now effectively got two different devices in front of me, which is really useful to use Summit as a master controller keyboard. So basically I can now, using this, I can have in sec mode still control over my synthesizer parameters, but totally detach the keyboard to play any other instruments that I might have within my setup. So that's the new local sec mode. I'm particularly happy to see that, to be honest. I think that's a really nice thing. Anyway, let's take us out of Ableton. Let's go back, because I did want to just explore that last thing we'll look at. We'll look at the delay again. I'm going to use this as a looper, but I'm just going to explore a little bit more modulation of the effects that we've got, because I think there's some really lovely stuff here. Now, I'm set to my piano sound. And I guess if I do this, and let's just initialize the patch, turn all my oscillators down, turn everything down here, and then just latch some keys on. So I need to go to local on, just latch some keys on. There we go. They're latched, they're held on. Well, the reason I've done that is basically I've now opened up the amplifier, and now if I go to my voice section, I can go over here and turn the audio input. So I've got my piano sound coming in through these connections, and I'm going to send that in before the filter. And that means that now in sec mode, I am in sec mode. Yeah, I can use the top panel, and I can bring the reverb. Oh, I think, do I need to... Hang on. Everything should be coming through. Maybe not. He says. Oh, I've lost my local mode. There we go. Let's go back to sec. Oh, aha! Right, I should have checked this before. And let's just take those off. Right, all I needed to do was just lock that on. That's fine. I've got no sound. Yeah, I've got no sound coming here. So let's. So now I've got the piano coming through the effects here. Great. So let's now go to our effects. Let's go to Hex Lo-Fi, my favourites. Let's go to sync, set that to 8 beats. Full level, feedback on full, and now we'll get the piano running through that loop. We've now got the piano in our delay, which is acting like a looper, which is lovely. And again, I can use the controls here. A bit of distortion maybe. Lovely. Now, let's now go to the FX modulation. And we've added a couple more destinations in here as well. So again, if we go to the end here, we've now got the low-pass, high-pass damp as a modulatable for the reverb. We've got the low-pass and high-pass filter. We've got the delay slew, 2 filter or damps for the delay as well. But this one, the delay ratio. And the delay ratio basically turns it into a kind of ping-pong delay, where you'll have kind of 3 times the speed in one side, 1 times the speed on the other side, or vice versa, or 2 times the speed. Basically, we can use the delay ratio to increase the delay taps in one side or the other. It's essentially a stereo effect. In fact, if we go here, you can see here it is. Let's just take the slew off, and we change the delay ratio. So because that's folding back in on itself through the effects, we can use this to get really lovely harmonic related, again, because they're really nice kind of proportions that we're using. We can get some really interesting stuff. Now let's just go back to the routing. Let's stick the reverb at the end of it all. There we go. So we can use the left-right ratio control here, or we can go to the mod matrix and say, okay, let's get LFO 3 or 4. Let's go for 3. Let's go to the delay ratio, and let's turn it onto that. And now let's go over to the sampling hole, I think, for that. So we've got this really wonderful harmonic kind of related delay line all over the place. Let's just bring the reverb down a touch. So we could get some really interesting stuff going on here. Now, I guess as one final huzzah, let's save that patch. Yeah, let's just save that patch. And I'll just do the usual thing of just changing the first letter there. There we go. I've probably got 1,000 VNIT patches, but there we go. Let's see where I'm going to save it. Yeah, there's 86 as an initialized patch. Just save it to that. Okay. I'm going to go to my multi. Let's go to an initialized multi. There we go. Part A, I'm going to save. Where did you go? Oh no, you're all the way down there. So it was 86, wasn't it? I think, if I remember. And bank C or D. Hey, there it is. Okay, and part B. And let's go up to that again. So C, 86. Come on, there we are. Right, back to the old voice. Position, pan position, all the way to the left. Sorry, right, all the way to the left there. Let's do that and see what happens. Oh yeah, we've got quite a bit of sound there. Let's bring the VCA down. You've got to watch your levels a little bit sometimes when you're working in this way. I've just taken the sound out. Now this is really fascinating because basically I'm still in sec mode. Oh no, I've got local on. What am I on about? I've got local on, but all the oscillators are turned down. We're not hearing the Summit synth engine. We're actually just using a Spitfire audio cinematic piano plugin, and that's just coming into the peak here, and it's basically then giving me, it's giving me basically an effects processor to work from. Let's bring a bit more reverb in. So this is fascinating because we're now just using Summit as an audio processor, not as a synthesizer in its own right. Let's bring the oscillators in as well, just so we can start to get a bit of synth in there. Obviously there's not much going on with the synth patch. Let's get something going on that. Am I still externally clocked yet? Now if I was really wanting to, and I think I will because I can take that circuit rhythm beat and also send that in to the Summit. There you go, and I could just stop the circuit rhythm. And it's gone a bit crazy. Well, I think I'll leave it at that. I hope that's been an interesting look into the into the new features that we've got there on the Summit. As I say, Enrique did a brilliant job last week on the Peak, talking through, and we've covered a lot of the similar sort of ground in this, but obviously in this session we've got our stereo stuff going a little bit kind of further in the Summit, simply because we've got our we've got our 2 voice boards in here to basically be able to make use of that stereo stuff. So yeah, let's get that all out. And of course, yeah, the pan is for the voice here before the effects. The effects are after the voices. So if I just bring that back in, piano sound. There we go, swirling around. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope it's been an interesting session for you, as I say. We've covered a lot of ground. The Summit really is an enormous device. There's a lot going on. I mean, I know I'm very biased. I work at Novation, but I'd be totally genuinely honest when I say this is 100% my desert island synth. There is just so much power, so much capability in this thing. It's a wonderful hybrid using incredibly high oscillator speeds to produce basically pure oscillators, no aliasing issues whatsoever, running through great sounding analog filter stuff, and then into some top-notch effects here as well. We've got our basic FM controls here to get some really interesting stuff, the Wavetable stuff. It's just a huge instrument. And just a quick reminder that at the minute we're not actually listening to the Summit. We are listening to Summit, but we're not listening to stuff that we've created in Summit. We're actually just using the effects over here, this looper. So yeah, I'm going to leave you to it now. But thank you very much for your time, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you hopefully at the next live stream. Okay, all the best. Bye bye.